Well, I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I want to say good morning to you as well. Hey, if you got a Bible or your phone or however you want to look at it, you need to go to Luke chapter 1, starting in verse 5. So this is something that we all kind of go through in life. It's different, but you'll understand what it is when I start talking about it. You know, there are all things that we know. We talk about we don't know what the future is, but there are a lot of things we know what the future is going to be. It's just a matter of waiting for it to get there until it's time. Correct? So we've got a lot of ladies in the church that are pregnant. Y'all are going to have babies soon, and that's exciting. But here's the thing. Like, you know what the future holds, correct? You know that in 30 weeks or 40 weeks or, however many weeks you got left, you know that at the end of that time that you're going to have a child. You're going to go into delivery, and you're going to have, a son or a daughter. And so it's just a matter of waiting until it's time. You're just kind of anticipating that. Christmas is coming up. The same thing happens with kids. Sometimes if you're an adult, you get excited about Christmas. You feel the same way. You know what the future holds. And on December 25th, we're going to celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And so you know what's coming. It's just kind of a time of anticipation and waiting until it's time. And then when it's time, then you celebrate. If you're an athlete, you train, you work hard, you compete, you do everything, up until you're waiting for the whistle to blow, you're waiting for the tip off, you're waiting for the game to get started, because you know what the future is. It's just a matter of you waiting until it's time. And when it's time, it's time. And it's time. And so there's this idea in the Old Testament called biblical prophecy that I want to kind of introduce to you, because it has a lot to do, not just with Jesus, but with a guy by the name of John that we're going to look at this morning, because that's kind of where Luke begins for us. And so here's what God does, not just for you and I, not just for us, because there's prophecy about what the future holds. It's just a matter of waiting and anticipating until it's time. But even for people before Jesus and before John, there was biblical prophecy, and they were waiting and they were anticipating until it was time. So here's some of the prophecy leading up into John. So this is in Malachi chapter 3. Verse 1, God says, this is God speaking, "Look, I'm going to send my messenger, and he's going to prepare the way before me. And then the Lord you are seeking will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant, whom you look for so eagerly, is surely coming, says the Lord of heaven's armies." And so God is telling his people, look, there's going to be this messenger that is on the way, and he is going to come before me. He's going to prepare a way for me. And then in Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, he says it even more explicitly. He says, "Look, I'm sending for you the prophet Elijah." Okay, because Elijah was caught up to be with God, never actually physically died. "So I'm sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives. His preaching is going to turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse." And so when Jesus was around, when John was there, people were anticipating the arrival of Elijah. If you remember, Jesus asked his disciples one day, he said, "Hey, y'all tell me who people say that I am." And they said, "Well, some people say you're the prophet. Some people say, you're a great teacher. Some people say that you're Elijah." And then he asked them, "Well, who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "Well, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God." So they were anticipating Elijah. But here's what a lot of people missed is that John the Baptist actually was Elijah. He was the one that was prophesied in Malachi that was coming to prepare the way for the Lord. And Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 17. The disciples came to him and they said, Why do the teachers of all the religious law insist that Elijah has to come before the Messiah comes?" And Jesus answered him. He says, "Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized. And they chose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer." Then the disciples realized that he was talking about John the Baptist. So John the Baptist was the fulfillment of Elijah coming to prepare the way for the Lord, who is going to be Jesus, who is this Messiah for us. And so Luke picks up in Luke chapter 1, verse 5, and he begins to tell the story, the Christmas story. So over the next couple of weeks, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through Luke chapter 1, Luke chapter 2, and a little bit of Luke chapter 3. So more or less, this is how it's going to go. We're going to do some teaching on the front end of this, and then we're going to dive into kind of just, what does it mean to you and I, okay? So in Luke 1, starting in verse 5, we're going to start here. And this is the story. It says, when Herod was king of Judea, there was a Jewish priest named Zechariah, and he was a member of the priestly order of Abijah, and his wife Elizabeth was also from the priestly line of Aaron. And so you've got Herod, Herod the Great, who is king of Judea. At that time, Israel was broke up into three different groups. You had Galilee, which is in the north, the Sea of Galilee. You remember that if you've read the Bible. In the middle was the land of Samaria. So sometimes it said that Jesus had to go through Samaria, the woman at the well. So he had to get from Judea, which is in the south, to Galilee, which is in the north. They either had to go around Samaria or they had to go through it. And so Jesus went through at that time that he met that lady at the well and had the conversation with her. And so Herod was king of Judah or Judea down in the southern area. And Zechariah was an Israelite priest from the order of Abijah. So they had different orders. I think there was 24 different orders of priests. And they each would go to the temple 2 weeks out of the year, and they would serve there at the temple. Everybody would bring their sacrifices. They'd come to the temple, and all the priests were like volunteer workers during their time period there at the temple. And he was married to this woman by the name of Elizabeth, who was also from a priestly line, from the line of Aaron. And so if you want to talk about power couples in the church, so there you go. You got a first century power couple. You've got Zechariah, priest, order of Abijah, married to Elizabeth, descended from Aaron, which is a big deal in the Old Testament. And so you have this power couple here in the Old Testament, and he's setting the stage for what God is going to do through them. And so in verses 6 and 7, it says Zechariah and Elizabeth, they were righteous in God's eyes. That's really important. I'm going to tell you why that's important in a minute. They were careful to obey all of the Lord's commandments and regulations, but they had no children because Elizabeth was unable to conceive and they were both very old. So if you are in the first century and you're married, especially if you're religious and you don't have any children, man, that's like a black mark on you. It's a negative thing, because what people thought when they looked at you is if God liked you, you would have children. That if you had been good in the eyes of God, you would have a child by now. And so it was tough on them to be good, to stay faithful to God, and yet not have any children. But Luke points out, he's real careful to make this clear. He's like, listen, the reason they don't have kids is not because they weren't good. He says they were righteous in God's eyes. They were careful to obey all of the Lord's commandments. And so then in verse 8, it says this. One day, Zechariah was serving God in the temple, for his order was on duty that week. As was the custom of the priests, he was chosen by lot. That's just kind of by random. He was chosen by lot to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and to burn incense. While the incense was being burned, a great crowd of people, they were standing outside. They were praying while he was inside offering incense. Now, here's another important, just kind of historical thing. Not every priest gets to go into the holy place and offer incense. There was the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was, and the cherubim, these angel figurines that were in there. Only one priest got to go in there one time a year, and it was just the high priest. So the closest you could get to this Holy of Holies was this holy place where the altar of incense was, table of showbread, some other things were there. So for Zechariah to have the opportunity to go into this area, it is a once-in-a-lifetime event for him. Not every priest got to do this. That's why they cast lots to see who was going to get to go in. And it fell on him. And I'll tell you this, not by accident. So he goes in there and he's offering up incense at the altar of incense. This is the high point of his entire priestly life. Verse 11 says, while Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah is shaken. He's overwhelmed, because that's usually what people do when they see angels, like a spirit being from another world. It bothers you, You don't really know what to do with that. But the angel said, don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife Elizabeth is going to give you a son, and you're going to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many people are going to rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. And then here's some things this is how we want you to raise the kid. He must never touch wine or any other alcoholic drinks. He's going to be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth. He's going to turn a lot of the Israelites, many Israelites, to the Lord their God. He's going to be a man with the spirit and the power of Elijah. There's that fulfillment of that prophecy. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly. And so you have Zechariah meeting Gabriel, this angel, in the middle of the temple in the holy place, and he is telling him, listen, you're going to have a son. God's going to bless you. You're going to name him John, and this is good because your wife's going to conceive and bear a son for you. But Zechariah, he just doesn't do very well with this. Listen to what happens in verse 18. So Zechariah says to the angel, really? How can I really be sure that this is going to happen? I'm an old man and my wife, she's way past, she can't have children anymore. She's past menopause. Menopause was like 30 years ago. There's no way we're going to be able to have kids. And the angel said, I am Gabriel. Now, this one thing we don't have in Scripture, we don't have tone. We don't have inflection of voice. I would love to hear how he said that because I think he's a little bothered. But he says, I am Gabriel and I stand in the very presence of God. And it was he who sent me to bring you this good news. But since you didn't believe what I said, you're going to be silent. You're going to be unable to speak until the child is born. For my words will certainly be fulfilled at the proper time. Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah to come out of the sanctuary, wondering why he was taking so long. And when he finally did come out, he couldn't speak. And they realized from his gestures and his silence that he must have seen a vision in the sanctuary. I don't want to read anything into the biblical text here, but if you can irritate an angel, that's what he did. Because can you imagine Gabriel, who stands in the very presence of God, sent to you, you're shaken, you're overwhelmed by fear. He delivers this incredible news to you. You're going to have this child you've always wanted for the rest of your life. And you're like, I just don't see how that's going to happen. How's that going to happen? He says, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. And he was irritated by what Zechariah had said. In verse 23, it says, when Zechariah's week of service in the temple was over, he returned home. And soon afterward, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and went into seclusion for 5 months. How kind the Lord is, she exclaimed. He has taken away my disgrace of having no children. And so the timing of this is a big deal. Because you have generations of Israelites who had waited for and anticipated the future that God had promised to them and said, this is what's going to happen. This is what's coming for you. I'm going to send my messenger. He's going to come in the spirit and the power of Elijah, and he's going to prepare the way for the Lord and for the Messiah. And it was time for that to happen. So, what do we take away from this? There's 4 different things I want to share with you that happened with Zechariah and Elijah and Elizabeth and all the things that happened here. Number 1 is this, is you need to stay faithful. Even when you don't understand why things are the way that they are, you have got to stay faithful to God. Because I just, I've been married, and a lot of you guys have been married too. How many conversations do you think Zechariah and Elizabeth had at night? Baby, I can't get pregnant. I thought I was, I'm not. Baby, I want a child so bad. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm doing everything I know to do. I'm praying about it. I'm asking God. I'm begging God. I'm fasting for him. I'm fasting too. I just don't understand why God would allow us to go through our entire lifetime and never have a child. We're righteous. We're served God. We've been obedient to God. We've done everything that God's asked us to do. God, why in the world wouldn't you allow us this one pleasure in our life? Why does everybody else around me have kids and I don't? Those women down the road treat their children so bad. I'd raise mine so good. They'd be raised in a house that loves you and adores you and serves you, and yet I don't have any children. That's tough. That's tough if you've gone through not being able to have kids. That's tough if you've gone through that time in your life where you've desperately wanted something and there's no reason why it would seem that God has kept you from allowing you to have that. And yet, here's what you see in their life is that they are faithful to God even when they don't understand why things are happening the way that they are. They don't understand why. And so must you. We've got to be faithful to God even when we don't understand why what's happening is going on with us. Because we it's like, God, I pray and I'm faithful and I'm obedient to you and I give and I serve and I share my faith and I help other people. And God, why are we struggling financially? God, why is my relationship with my husband or wife, why do we have to go through these, why do we have to have the same conversation over and over and over again when I am praying and I'm asking and I'm trying to do my very best? God, why? I don't understand that. You see, it's at those moments that our faith it's tested, isn't it? Are you going to remain faithful to God even when you don't understand why what's happening is going on? So many different things that happen in our lives. As I look at my life and I look at your life too, we have these exceptions, that are there. Kind of with Zechariah and Elizabeth, you look, they're married, they've been married a long time. He's a priest, she's descended from they're righteous in God's eyes, they're good in God's eyes, they've been careful to obey all of God's commandments. I mean, from what I can tell, everything in the community is good with them. Everybody likes them. They're a power couple, in the church. And he's been good, she's been good. Their health has been good. They're both old and they're both still alive. Their marriage has been good, it seems, to some degree at least. They're still married. Things are still rocking along. They've got a relationship with one another, and yet they have that exception. Right? Everything's great, God, but why don't we have a child? And we go through that as well, don't we? I mean, everything's perfect in our life. The marriage is great and the kids are good, but we're just destitute financially. It's like, God, everything's wonderful, but why this? I'm being faithful to you, God. I'm doing everything you want me to do. I'm being in church and I'm serving, but like everything's good except this. Or the finances are great and the health is good, but the marriage is kind of rough. And it's like, God, all this over here is really great. And I'm being good. I'm being fair. I'm doing what I think you want me to do. And so why do I have this outlier over here? Why does this one have to just be this thing that's out there? It's just so hard for me. And it doesn't matter what family it may be. My family, your family, the family sitting next to you in church. I mean, we've all got these outliers. Like everything in life is basically good except... that exception that just kind of seems to linger sometimes. But you've got to determine in your mind to stay faithful to God even when you don't understand what's going on. And it happens. Paul had the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. Remember, God had used him. Incredible miracles worked through this guy. He had just phenomenal revelations from God explaining to him about things that were going to happen in the future and what God was doing, and used him to plant churches and really establish Christianity in the area of Asia and in that area where Israel is, which is the foundation for all of Christianity in the world. And yet he's like, God, I got this thing that I want to pray about. And it's a thorn. It just feels like a thorn in my flesh and it just won't go away. And he says, and I prayed once, twice, 3 times. And he said, God came to me and says, listen, I'm just going to leave it there. We're just going to leave it there. He says, my grace is sufficient for you because my power is perfected in your weakness. And so what it seems like in my life and in your lives and in Paul's life and really just probably every life that's out there, there'll be so many things that are just going great, like dozens of things that are just fine, they're normal, this like life is supposed to be. But then we've got these outliers, these exceptions that are out there, and we're like, God, why? I don't understand. But the call for you and I is we won't always understand why. Of course, for years and years, Zechariah and Elizabeth, they didn't understand why. But we've got to remind ourselves to stay faithful to God even when we don't understand those things. Second thing is this, is that God's got you. You just take that one, hide it away inside of your soul. God's got you. There just seems to be, again, in each of our lives, at different times, it doesn't happen all the time, where God overrides your free will. Where whatever your choice was, he's like, I don't care. I'm just going to do something in your life whether you want it to or not. And the sovereignty of God steps forward and he just takes control over a decision, over a choice, over a situation in your life, that he just says, look, my way is the only way, and this is exactly how it's going to happen. Because when you think about Zechariah, he's there, he's speaking to Gabriel, who stands in the very presence of God, and he doesn't believe. We talk about faith a lot in church, don't we? Like, you got to have faith, because when you have faith and when you believe, then good things happen and God responds. He didn't have faith. And that baby still came. He was like, I just don't even know if I can believe what you're saying. He was like, well, guess what? You're going to remain silent. The baby's coming anyway, regardless of whether or not you got faith. So the sovereignty of God stepped in there and just said, look, I don't care whether you believe or not. This is what's going to happen. And those things happen to you too. You may have meant or almost died or should have died in an automobile accident, and you didn't. And you look back at it and you're like, I wonder why I didn't die. Sovereignty of God. God just said, not yet. It's not time. You may have gone through an illness in your life where you should have died, and God just said, nope, not your time. It's not going to happen to you, not right now. And sometimes when those sovereign things of God happen, sometimes we see it in the moment. Sometimes we don't see it, just later on, kind of in hindsight, we capture it and we understand what God was doing. Sometimes I don't think we even really ever recognize where God steps in sovereignly and does something amazing in our life. There's people probably that you have met that was a sovereign choice of God. And there's probably somebody that you just were never meant to meet in the sovereign choice of God. There were doors that have been opened to you that would have never been opened that God made sure were. There were doors that were closed to you that God said, I want that door shut. It ain't opening for you because that's not what's good for you. God steps in and does incredible things in our lives. I told this story at 9 o'clock. I don't think I've ever told it to the church before because you need to know me for a while before I tell you this one. But in retrospect, you look back in your life, you think, well, that was God. That was a sovereign thing of God. So when I was a kid, and I used to like to fight a lot, and so I'd carry a bat in the back of my car, and because sometimes the fights weren't fair, right? So you need a bat. And if you're a 17-year-old idiot, you have a bat in your trunk. All right, so I was at this party, and these, I don't know, there's 3 or 4 guys. There was much more of them than there were of me. They were coming to beat me up. So I popped my trunk and grabbed that bat. They decided that they didn't want me and my bat. So they turned and walked away. So I got back in my car. I've been drinking. I was drunk. And I went back to my house, and I was sitting in my room. And my friend called me. He says, Gary, they're coming to your house. They're going to knock all the windows out of your car. Now, let me tell you, if there was an idol in my life, it was my car. I had a 69 Chevy Camaro. I mean, anyway, it was a big deal for me. And so when I found out they were headed to my house to knock the windows out of my car, I was angry. And I was drunk. And so I put on my camouflage jacket. I grabbed my rifle. I chambered a shell. I snuck out the window of my house. And I got off in the bushes on the side of my house. And I had decided that as soon as anybody walked up to my car, I was going to shoot them dead. 17 years old, probably, I don't know, it didn't happen, obviously, would have been tried as an adult. And I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I was looking at my car, and I was thinking, something just doesn't look right about my car. And so finally, I got out of the bushes, and I walked toward my car, and my windows were already busted out of my car. 5 minutes, maybe. And I look back on that, and I think, man, it was just a sovereign move of God to keep a 17-year-old drunk idiot from doing something that would have ruined the rest of his life. And you've probably got stories like that. I've got other stories like that. But God in his sovereignty steps in sometimes and overrides our free will to keep you and I from doing stupid things, to deliver us from something that maybe was not our fault at all and he's not done with your life. To make sure that you meet the person that you're supposed to meet or stay away from the one you should never meet. To walk through the open door that he opened for you or to just bang your head against a closed door that he's going to make sure never opens for you. God in his sovereignty, he does these types of things for us. And he did that for Zechariah and Elizabeth, and he does that sometimes, not all the time, but he does that for us. Number 3 is this, is that God's got a plan for you. That as you go through life, you don't understand the things that are happening in your life, you stay faithful to him. You understand that as you are faithful to him, that God's got you in his sovereignty. He has you, and he has you because he has a plan for your life. When you read all these things about John the Baptist and the different characteristics of who he was going to be and how he was going to be raised, I mean, that's John. That's John. That's not necessarily you. There was one of him. There was one of Jesus, and there's one of you. But I'll tell you this, in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10, it talks about by grace that we've been saved through faith, and it's not of ourselves. It's a gift of God, lest no one boast, by being able to achieve it ourselves. He says, but you and I, we are God's workmanship, and we have been created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Now, here's the amazing part about it, to do good works which God prepared in advance for us. That means before you were ever even born, God had in mind what he wanted to do through your life. Before you were ever even brought into existence, God had plans for you that he wanted to accomplish through you. And And so I've got plans. God has plans for my life, and there are sovereign moments in my past where God has just stepped in and said yes or no, and he did that because he has a plan for my life. And I promise you there are sovereign moments in your life where God has shut doors, he's opened doors, he's ran people out of your life, he's brought people into your life, he's allowed things and he's not allowed things because he has a plan for your life. Because he has a plan for your life. But you've got to stay faithful through those moments of your life that you don't understand what God is doing. And you realize and you remind yourself that God's got you because he has a plan for you. And here's what you just got to remember, that you don't ever get to a point where you don't believe him, where you disbelieve. Because that's the fourth one, and that's what Zechariah did. He's standing in front of Gabriel, an archangel of God who stands in God's very presence, and he's questioning what he has to say. Now, I've never seen an angel. I don't know if you have or not. If you did, you'd know it. But it doesn't mean that God hasn't spoken to you. It doesn't mean God hasn't made clear to you what his will is. It doesn't mean that God hasn't shown you exactly kind of how things are supposed to be working in your life right now. And so you know what you need to know. God has made sure of that. He's made it clear to you. And so as he makes those things clear to you, you've got to make sure that you stay faithful to him and trust that he has got you because he has a plan for you. And as that plan is working out in your life, you've better make sure that you don't not believe him, because when you don't, you miss. You miss out on God, you miss out on the blessings of God, you miss out on open doors and other things that God wanted to do on your behalf. And so as we just kind of shut it down for this morning, I know that we're all in different places, but I just want to remind you that he loves you and he cares for you. And Zachariah and Elizabeth or Mary and Joseph, I mean, they're not any different than you and I are. God had a plan for their life, and he orchestrated and executed that plan. And God has a plan for your life, and he wants to orchestrate and execute that plan through your life. But you stay faithful to him, and you remind yourself day in and day out that he's got you. And when God's sovereign hand needs to step into your life to make something happen or keep something from happening, you can trust him because he'll take care of that. Let's pray together.